Well, hello, lovely listeners. Today, I know your name's Scott. What is actually your surname? Graham Stevens.
Yes, but the name that you can find me on Google is Graham.
Just
Okay, so
my
my surname is Graham, but my surname is now Graham Stevens, and but my name that I'm published with and everything that you can find me on Google is just Graham without the dash and Stevens.
Right, so Scott Graham.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I've got the honor of speaking to Scott Grahams today. Scott is an author of 15 books, currently working on number 16. That just boggles my brain. He's also a career coach and a business coach based in Boston, Massachusetts.
That's it.
And there is a lot more to Scott. Just having 10 minutes before hitting record, my mind was popping all over the place. So Scott, welcome so much to the Never Settle podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you.
It is great to be here. It is great to be here. You've got a great podcast. I've checked it out before. You get these, I'm trying to promote myself by going to different podcasts and I check out the podcasters and see what it's like. And I just want to congratulate you on just having a great podcast and really hitting on a lot of things that people need to know and learn about.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you so much, Scott. Well, I love to start all of my interviews with knowing more about you as a person. How you grew up, what sort of influenced you, any moments in your life that really changed the direction of where you were going, and anything you feel cool to share. So over to you in terms of, I really want to know more about you.
Well, let's start off with the surname piece.
Yeah, please.
Because since that was a piece that you brought up, so I'll give your view. Is this audio and video? Are people watching this? Okay, so I'll give you people that are watching and listening to this just fair warning to strap in. So, I was in a 31-year relationship, monogamous relationship for 31 years. And I had been practicing Vipassana in all that time. And I had just finished a 10-day silent Vipassana course on December 22nd, 2019. And on that morning, my husband of 31 years got in an automobile accident and burned alive. And it was right before COVID hit, right? Like COVID hit right after that. And I really learned a lot from that whole piece over the last 2 years. In fact, that's one of my I was talking to you earlier, that's one of my more recent books. There we are. That is both about kind of how I coped with stuff during, and tips on how to cope with stuff, feedback, and really direct criticism of the absolute crap support that people who are grieving get. And also it's a little bit of a memoir of what I went through. So one of the pieces that is actually a chapter in the book is this piece about the surname, because my Brian's last name was Stevens.
Okay.
And so I decided that, there was this piece of like, how can I carry him on with me? And how can I make sure that our vision, we talked a lot of people in relationships don't do this, but we did this. We spent a lot of time in our relationship talking about what kind of a relationship do we want to have? What's our vision for life? How can we live as authentically as possible? What does it mean when we say we're going to support each other and be there for each other? And I think those conversations really led us to have such a great relationship for 31 years. We had a monogamous, loving relationship.
How did you meet him?
Actually, he actually picked me up in a bar. And and said, and his little come on line was, he didn't like to dance. And I didn't know this when I met him, because he asked me to dance. That's how he would meet people. He'd say, do you want to dance? And he hated dancing. He just did not. And so it was one of the things we talked about a lot in our relationship was, I don't understand. Why don't you want to go out dancing or do something? And he'd like, oh, I don't like dancing. I'm like, but that's how we met. He's like, that's how I pick people up. And I think the hallmark of what attracted him to me, I think, was the fact that I wasn't out to change him. Like, I wasn't like, you need to, you're great, but you need to be taller. You're great, but most people, when they're looking for somebody, they have a list, right? They need to be a vegetarian. They need to know how to play backgammon. They need to go running. They need to have this political view. They need to do this. And I had a list at one point, and it was not where I threw the list away.
Yeah.
So that was my learning. I threw the list away and was like, you know what? Here's the reality of our relationship over 31 years. How we were, if I had a list, how we were in 1988 when we met, and how we were in 2019 when he died, are vastly different.
Yeah.
Because everything changes. Right? I mean, your likes, your dislikes, what you eat, what you believe in, all those things that, are static. I mean, are dynamic. We think it's static, and we expect everything to be the same, but nothing's the same, whether it's people, whether it's our houses, whether it's our cars, right? They all fall apart. They all, change. So that was kind of a hallmark of what I think sustained us. And so I decided that one of the things I wanted to do was to somehow carry him forward in what we were doing. And part of that piece that I've done since then was to fully create and, I guess, legalize. We had run an animal rescue together out of the goodness of our hearts and our own pockets. And I realized that, with him gone, I needed to have some mechanisms to sustain that beyond me. So I created a 501c3 and got volunteers. And so our efforts of the two of us have been replaced by, a more formal volunteer organization that I'm now the executive director of. And then the other piece that I did along this piece was I decided to change my last name to include his last name. And I didn't think, I'm telling you listeners, I did not think that this was going to be a big deal. I thought it was going to be fairly easy. But after 9/11 and the bombings of the Twin Towers, changing your name is not an easy thing. Not an easy thing at all. And because everything needs to be synchronized when you're going on an airplane flight, from your driver's license to your birth certificate. And so when I changed my name, I actually got because it wasn't part of a marriage, right? If you get a marriage certificate, then you've got this legal document to change your name. But if you change your name outside of that process, you actually have to go to court, meet with the judge, explain this to the judge, get a court order, and they actually change your birth certificate so that your birth certificate lines up with, I didn't know this. I mean, it all has to line up for real ID, right? Because if I went to renew my driver's license, the name on my driver's license and my social security card and my birth certificate all need to match, or I ain't flying. And so, and it needs to match my passport or I ain't flying. And so I went ahead and met with the judge, and I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be really quick. But then the judge wanted to know, what happened. And boy, I was glad I had a friend with me because I had to tell her about Brian's death and his body, and you know, our relationship and commitment. And she said, so we're all crying in the courtroom. I'm crying, the judge is crying, the clerk of the court who's doing the transcript is crying, the people that are, you know, in the back for the next cue to the judge, everybody's crying as I'm telling my story and Brian's death, because it's a very powerful, and I even talk about it in the book of how, I mean, I'm lucky because I'm an EMT and a firefighter, in addition to all this other stuff. And
what's an EMT?
Emergency medical technicians. So EMS, like, you know, first aid, not first aid, like, you know, help somebody with their, you know, who's can't breathe or heart or bleeding or something like that.
Yeah.
And mini doctor, but not really, you know, kind of a supercharged nurse. And so I was able, when I didn't know when Brian when he died, that he had burned to death. And I knew it was a car accident, and I didn't know what happened. And so, you know, I was driving up after the meditation course with a friend who said, you can't go home alone. You need to have somebody with you. And I called to see what was going on and what has happened. And I had discovered that this is rural Vermont. There's not a lot of people here. And they were waiting for a fire investigator to come up from, like, you know, 3 hours away. And so everything was still on the scene of the accident, like hours and hours and hours after the folks had arrived. And so I said, I want to see him. I need to see him. And they were like, oh no, you can't do that. You know, we don't let the public just stroll into, because we don't know what happened. It could have been a crime scene. We don't know what happened. It's just all yellow tape roped off, keep out. And I'm a pushy, talkative person, as you viewers can tell. So I didn't let it go. And so I came on the scene. I have a big red truck in the United States that you know, all the fire engines are red. I got little sirens on the top and lights on the top. I turned them all on and showed up. And I was like, I really want to see him. Because I didn't know if I could, if it was the last time that I would see him. And because he was going for an autopsy and they're going to be cremated because they need to figure out what had happened. And I said, I really, you know, I gave them some information that they wanted. I was really cool and composed because, you know, I'm a firefighter and EMT. I've seen stuff before. And they're like, yeah, but this is personal, yeah. Right? It's one thing if you see a stranger who's been hurt or has died. It's another thing if it's somebody that you know and love and care about. I'm like, no, I'm fine. And so he was under a yellow tarp, and they gave me permission to go beyond the yellow line and see the scene. And I was, you know, I'm like, yeah, I knew right away, because I mean, we slept next to each other for 31 years. I knew right away that it was him, even though I couldn't see his face. I could just see the back of his head and his hair, and I mean, his neck and all those things. And I said to them, I just need to touch him. And I have to touch him and tell him I love him and I'm there. And they were like, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm doing that. And I put my hand on his shoulder and said, I love you. I love you. And, you know, I shared that story with the judge. And she asked me, she said, why were you so insistent about going on the scene and seeing him and touching him? And I said, because that was the hallmark of our relationship. You know, I made a commitment to be there no matter what. And it wasn't just words to say there, I'm going to be there No matter, I mean, lots of people say I'm going to be there no matter what, through good times and bad times, but we really meant it, no matter what, till the end. And the judge said, you know, I really admire and respect, as she's crying, you know, the relationship you had and how you want to still honor him. And she said, you know, the reality now, she said, is I've changed your name. She said, is, you know, every time you write your signature now, from now until you die, he'll be there with you.
Okay, so I'm a blubbering wreck.
You weren't expecting this from you weren't expecting this from our initial conversation, but you asked about the surname, so there you go. It really is about living life fullest and stepping up to the plate, because, you know, if we don't do that, what's the sense of this life that we have?
Well, firstly, thank you for sharing that so honestly and vulnerably. Whoever listens to this episode, there isn't going to be a dry eye in the house. Do you, it's a stupid question just given what you've just said, but
there are no stupid questions.
Did you ever regret seeing him?
No,
I didn't think
no.
so.
I you know, one of the things a few years ago that I decided that was really important to me was that I was going to live a life of no regrets. And the important thing for your listeners and viewers out there to know is that when I say that piece, that doesn't mean, you know, I'm going to live a life where I'm going to, like, you know, have sex with 1 million people, you know, stand on top of the Eiffel Tower, and I'm going to, you know, go do all these things and just suck the joy. It's not that kind of regret that I'm talking about. When I say I want to live a life of no regrets, and I think this is important for all of us, when I say that piece, it means that when I look back on my life and the relationships I've had, the people I've known, the things I've done, I am not going to say, I wish I shoulda, coulda.
Yeah.
You know, oh, you know, you see people that, you know, for example, they work their entire lives to retire and then travel the United States or travel the, you know, the UK or travel around Europe, and they're very excited about that stuff. They work, they're 65, they retire, and then they die at 66. They haven't done that stuff, right? They spent their whole life toiling away for something they wanted to grab, and then it escaped them. Yeah. You know, or somebody says, you know, I got in a fight with my sister. My mom was like this. She got in an argument with her sister, and it was like before I was born, or right around when I was born, and they got in a fight and they never spoke for the rest of their lives. And then my mom's sister died, you know, and then my mom, I'm like, I'm not going to do that. Like, you know, I'm not going to have unresolved shit in my life that when I get to my deathbed, I'm like, oh, I've got 3 minutes left to live, and, you know, 3 years worth of stuff to resolve. That's not going to happen to me. And so, you know, I remember when I was there, a friend of mine said, you know, yeah, you can't go. I can't believe you're going to go see him on the scene. And I said to her, I said, I have no choice. And she's a therapist. You know, some of these therapists are like, we all have choices. Everything in life is a choice. I said, no, I don't have a choice. I have to do this. And she said, no, we have a choice, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you know what? I didn't have a choice, because if we live our life around certain values, those choices go away. We make a choice to have no choice around certain things, right? And so if I had said, okay, yes, I have a choice, I'm not really, you know, no. I made that choice, 31 years ago when we got together, and I said, we're there. We're committed to the end.
Amazing.
And that, yeah, if only more people live their life that way.
I was just thinking exactly the same thing. That's one kind of love. That's like one magical kind of love.
Yeah. And not just part of love, if more people live their life that way around, really the values they hold, right? I have no choice but to be this way because this is the kind of person I am, period, end of discussion. I'm not wavering. I'm not going to steal. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to, whatever it is. This is who I am. This is what my life means. This is what integrity means. So all these other things, I have no choice. That's done. It's decided. Boy, people waffle all the time about this stuff.
Yeah, totally. And it's very obvious why you're a coach. Were you always like this as a kid growing up?
Oh, man. No, I was a hellacious kid, always getting in trouble in school. I went to a Catholic school here in the United States. My parents were always getting called by the nuns. Oh my God. My father said, "Oh man, what did we do to deserve this?" Yeah, and I, obviously, for your listeners, I was married to a man, and but I almost got married when I was in my late teens to a woman, and that would have been a disservice to me and to her. It would have been a huge disservice, right? So I wasn't always living with integrity because clearly that person was full of shit and not living the true life of who they were.
Yeah.
Right. I was so no, I wasn't always this way. I'm grateful that I am. And it's been not an easy journey.
So you nearly got married, but you didn't. Or you
Yeah.
did. Yeah. So who stopped it, you or her?
I stopped it. And interestingly enough, it wasn't because, and this is just this is the lack of integrity, pathetic piece. It wasn't because I was gay. It wasn't because, I'd rather be with a guy than you. She just was like rushing to get married. She wanted to get married. I think she wanted to get pregnant. I don't know. She really, really wanted it. So much so that 2 months after we broke up, she was
Pregnant.
married.
Oh, married.
No, married. Forget pregnant. It's easy to get pregnant right after you break up. That's quick, 5 minutes for some guys.
Wow.
No, she was married 2 months after we, broke up. I dodged that bullet. Boy, let me tell you. I mean, forget about the whole gay piece. I just dodged that bullet from that very, wow.
So what happened next then in between that particular episode to I mean, had you had gay relationships prior to that, or were you
No, I had sex with a teacher who, and that was it. It was that, the typical, in today's, this was in the 80s, in the early 80s, in today's movement, it probably would have been, sexual abuse or what. I knew what I was doing. I mean, come on. I knew what I was doing. He was 25 years older, 30 years older than me, but, I knew what I was doing. He was like, and that was just a one-off. And then, eventually, I came out of the closet. I was in undergraduate school for forever. And I mean, forever. And it was really because I realize now that, I have an insatiable desire to learn. So I graduated from high school early. And I was still, I was like 17 when I went to college. I got out of high school early and went to college. And I was like on this fast track, like, I'm going to get this and get my master's degree and blah, 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 blah. Well, then I started taking classes in college and I like this class and that. I went to school in the summer, not just, I mean, I didn't just go in the school in the spring and the fall and it was a semester. I went to school in the summer because I was like, I want to take this class and that class and that class. And so I was in college for, are you guys ready for this? I was in college, undergraduate. You're supposed to be out in 4 years, right? 3 years if you go in the summer. I was in college for 7 years because I kept switching my major. And by the time I finished, the college gave me 2 bachelor's degrees because I had been in college for so long.
What did your parents say?
What'd you say?
What did your parents say?
They just were like, oh, I don't know what he's going to do. They were just like, I don't know what he's doing.
Let him
He's
get
just,
on with it.
yeah. Because I kept switching my major, which is why I ended up with 2 degrees. So,
Yeah.
I went from engineering to I started off in music, and then I went to engineering, and then I switched over to, psychology, and then I switched over to public communication and public speaking, which you can tell I did pretty well in the public speaking category in college. So, and the only reason I didn't get my, the only reason I stopped was because had I not stopped, I would have had to take another year of a foreign language. And that was the consequence of a year was too much. I was like, oh, no. I really have to buckle down because I can't be in college for 8 years. And I remember meeting with my advisor, and she said, you know what? You have just about enough credits to get 2 degrees. She said, you just need like 2 or 3 credits more. And I'm like, I can't imagine any classes I could take. And she's like, well, I can. She went through the list, right? Because all those college advisors are living vicariously through what the students are doing. So I ended up taking a backpacking class in the PE department, which I loved, and a scuba diving class in the PE department. And it's kind of like, oh, I got my degree. All I had to do was take a basket weaving class, right? And those 2 things put me over the top, and I got 2 bachelor's degrees from college.
Yeah.
And it was good that I was stopping because I really loved the PE stuff. I was like, wow, this is interesting, right? Now I'm in addition to being a career coach and business coach, I'm a personal trainer. I've run a bunch of marathons and half marathons, and so that was a little thing I wanted to. I'm glad I didn't take more classes because I would have been there for another 5 years.
So what did you do when you finally graduated? What did you jump into first?
I was working as a bartender. So this is a hope for all of you people that are out there working as bartenders and waitresses. Let me tell you, that's not the end of the road. I was working as a bartender, and a friend said, you know what, you got all this experience and degrees, you got to do something. So I worked with inner city youth for a while. And then I got an opportunity because I had hiked the Appalachian Trail in all of this stuff too. So and that's a long distance trail that I kind of like those types of things. In fact, this past September, I was in the UK on the Pennine Way until my knees blew out. And
I saw that you've had 2 knee ops or something.
Yeah. I have 2 now. Now I've got 2 artificial knees, and it was funny because I'm on the Pennine Way, and with COVID. This was this past September. So I was like very diligent about getting into the UK because, the UK was like, we don't want you infected Americans coming over here. And I'm like, I'm not infected. I went through all the hoops, and like just into the hike, my knee blew out, and I was like,
what does that feel like? What does that look like? Because I'm having troubles with my knees at the moment, and I keep worrying.
It feels like intense pain as your knee is actually moving around, right? And so I was not going to call. I was determined. I'm like, I am not going to give these people in the UK another American story, right? Like American comes to the UK and then has to get evacuated because what the hell is wrong with these Americans? And so I literally dragged myself out from where I was in the on the trail, and it took me 6 hours to go 3 miles because I was determined not to have somebody carry me out. And then I got to the hospital in Manchester in the UK. And I mean, what a great experience compared to the hospitals in America. Wow. And really, because, you know, in America, you sit around, I was like, and I'm an EMT, right? So all this stuff kind of interests me on stuff. And they took an X-ray and they looked at it, and, you know, the doctor had so much joy. I could see it in his eyes of when he said, did somebody in America look at your knees before you came? I'm like, yes. And he's like, we would have never done this in the UK. We would have never, if you were in the UK and you wanted to go hike in America and we saw your knees, we would have never sent you over to America to do that. What kind of doctor do you have in America? He's just joyful as and proud, like, you know. And I shared that story with my doctor back in the UK, in the United States, when I got back. And he's like, oh yeah, but the healthcare in the UK is horrible. I bet they didn't even give you any pain meds. And I'm like, no, they didn't give me any pain meds. But so I came, you know, back here, flew back, and they replaced your knee. So I have a completely new knee made of titanium and plastic or something like that. It's you know, they saw it off. They use these, like, they knock you out, they dislocate your leg, they, you know, figure out all these different sizes, and then they put your knee back together with this metal and titanium and plastic, and glue it. They glue it all, right? So and then, you know, they you can't walk then. You have, I mean, you have the mechanics, it's all there, and you just have to force yourself to walk and learn and all those things again, because I couldn't.
How long did that take?
It depends on the person. I was done in 3 weeks.
Well, you're a determined person.
Because they were like, in fact, you know, one of the things they do, what they have to do is, because they dislocate your leg, you cannot straighten your leg fully. When you go to the furthest you can straighten your leg, it's slightly bent, you know, and you can't bend your leg like to touch your butt with your heel. You know, in that sense, you can't do that either. So their goal is to get your leg straight while they're strengthening it. And so they literally, you lay on a table and they, like, it's excruciating. They push your leg down till it's straight. And then the other thing they do is you sit on the edge of the table and they push your leg back to bend it, because they're basically doing stretching, right, to stretch your leg out, but they're really doing it forcefully, so that you can get your leg to 100. I'm at like 99.7% of getting my leg straight. And so you know, like when you're standing sometimes and you lock your legs and you put all your weight on your muscle system on one of your legs while you're standing there, I can do that with my left leg, which has been replaced, and I can do that with my right leg, but I can feel tension in it. That's why I say I'm like 97% there. I'll get there. But it starts to solidify. So they're very rigorous about this. I went to and they ask you when you go for physical therapy, they're like, how was, you know, any feedback from the physical therapy? And I said to them, I said, well, you're really not doing a good job. You know, you're not pushing me as far as you should be pushing me. You just go. And let me tell you, listeners, especially if you're in the United States, if you don't say that to a physical therapist, because they were like, we're not pushing you. And the next you know. And I said to them, she said, I said, you need to force it and you know, really push. And you know, just because I'm saying stop, 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 you know, doesn't mean you should stop. And then so the next time
There's
they're
something
like
wrong
really,
about that.
they're really pushing down, and I'm like, stop, stop, stop. And they're like, you said you'd say that, we're ignoring you. So maybe if you're going for physical therapy, you need to have a safe word, you know.
Yeah.
You could say, no, 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 apple, apple. That means too much enough while you're screaming.
Oh God, it
Oh
sounds
man.
awful. Sounds awful. Okay, so I've just
Oh,
noticed.
you're like spinning, right? We've like gone, we're like, you're trying to go through my life in this trajectory, and we're all like
I know
all
we're
over the
going all
place.
over the place, but yeah, I've just noticed the time, so I was just thinking, I really want to know how you got into the coaching and being an author, because you, like, you know, we talked briefly before we came on about your marijuana books, LGBT, and I don't even know the rest of the acronym. Like you said, it's getting longer every day. Um, so how did you get into the coaching? Because obviously, I know we're going to sort of jump a little bit here, but you left uni.
Yeah, so I had worked as an outward bound instructor, and I had
Yeah.
worked as a therapist and counselor for a not-for-profit. I'm a rostered psychotherapist and licensed substance abuse counselor, and I worked my way up to be the executive director of a program here in the state. And I had what in the E-Myth Michael Gerber calls, you know, an entrepreneurial seizure. That's actually a term that he uses there. And that's where, you know, a lot of times in businesses, somebody says, oh my God, enough's enough. I am not working for this person. I'm sick of it. I am just, people are crazy, or you're taking advantage of me. I'm working 1,000,000 hours a week and nothing to show for it. I'm enough. And I remember talking to Brian. Brian's really why I became a coach.
Okay.
And he had a coach because he was working for Applebee's at the time, and he had a coach that he was working with. And he said, I see the work that you do with all these other people. Why don't you become a coach? You've already have, you know, the background of counseling and all these other pieces. And I was like, he's like, you know, I got your back, you know. And I said, I don't know, you know, it's scary on your own. You know, should I do this part-time? He says, you don't, we don't know. We're not doing this stuff part. If you're going to do it, do it. And, you know, and I'm like, what if I don't? He's like, I got your back. Same thing, like the fire, you know, I got your back. And he said, I remember him saying, we've said this to each other all the time. He said to me, he said, I would rather see you chase your dreams and support you and end up living in a cardboard box on the side of the road because we didn't make it, than to be so wrapped up in all these things that I wasn't there for you. Because these things aren't what make life. It's so that's how I became a coach and started doing that. And then the same thing happened with a book. I had gotten somebody asked me, you know, there is, and I'll tell you all your listeners to be aware of this. There is this cottage industry out there for people who it's really grown from when I wrote my first book 10 years ago or 15 years ago. It's really grown. There's this cottage industry out there of people who say, we're going to make you an international bestseller. And it's really driven by people who say, I want to be famous, or I want to have a, you know, I want to be this. And what they do is they reach out to similar folks. Like they might say, we're going to write a book on, you know, restaurant successes. And they reach out to 20 different people who are in a restaurant and say, you can be a best-selling author. All you have to do is write one chapter, 1,000 words, will help you, and it'll cost you $2,000. And we'll put your picture in the book and all this stuff. So they talk to 20 different people, get 20 different chapters, $2,000 from each person, which is $40,000 to write the book. And then they publish you. You're really a chapter in a book. But you know, you can be like, I'm a best-selling international author. and you're not. It's just one of a million books on Amazon, just like there's a ton of podcasters out there, right? There's so you really have to work to set yourself aside. So this was in its infancy, and somebody asked me to write in this book and write a chapter, and I had to pay for it, but I was like, I'm not paying for it. They still put me in the book, and the book supposedly made me an international best-selling author. You can't even find the book anywhere. Anywhere. And I remember Brian saying to me, "You're a pretty clever guy. Geez Louise, you spent 7 years in undergraduate school. Just think of all the term papers you wrote. You know a lot of stuff. Why don't you write your own book?" And that was my first book that I wrote, it was a baby book, 10 things about coaching you need to know before you hire a coach. Wow. And I thought, oh, I'm not going to write any other books. That's just my one book I'm going to write. And then I'm like, oh, I have an opinion on that. And Brian was like, oh, you should write about that. And so I have an opinion on that. And he was like, oh, you should write about that. Next thing you know, I have this like laundry list of like 50 books that I need to write that are flowing out there. Yeah,
because they're all like different topics, because like normally people are writing books around the same sort of thing, not you.
Right. No, 7 years in undergraduate school, 2 degrees. I have a lot of interest. In fact, I was going to write a book on had it not fallen apart. I still might figure out a way to write a book on this. But I was the whole Pen and Way trip in the UK that was all written off for the taxes, because my plan was to write a book, An American's Guide to the Pen and Way.
Right.
And sell it to American. I hiked the GR20 in Corsica over in France in 2015. I did the whole thing, and I did it because I was 53 when I did it, but a friend of mine, and he was turning 40 and I was turning 50. And 2 years before this, we were like, we need to do something to prove that we are still men. What are we going to do? We talked about Kilimanjaro, and we talked about, doing some other big peaks and Machu Picchu. Let's find something we could hike up. And he ended up bagging out, and I had really wanted to hike, and I was devastated, because he was like, I don't have the money, I can't do it, I'm doing that. And I was so dejected, and I remember Brian coming home, and he's like, what's wrong? And I said, Tim ended up not wanting to do this trip. And he said to me, F him. He said, you want to do this trip? He says, here, just buy a plane ticket and go. And I'm like, well, I have to figure it out. I have to figure out, the length and what I'm going to do. He said, just look on the internet, see what the average time is to hike the GR20, add 5 days to it in case you have problems along the way, and buy the goddamn plane ticket, he said. And literally that day I bought the plane ticket, and then I did the GR20, and that's a book I'm working on, An American's Guide to the GR20. I have a lot of interests, clearly.
Well, Brian sounds amazing and incredibly supportive and full of life. In terms of the marijuana and the LGBT stuff, can you talk us through how that's become such a thing for you?
Yeah. So I'll talk about the marijuana piece with this legalization bullshit that's going on. And I should tell you, I'm a marijuana enthusiast, I guess would be the term. I smoke marijuana, I grow marijuana, I have a big ginormous bag full of marijuana. I mean, a huge bag. It's because a friend gave me a plant, and I'm like, I can't smoke this much marijuana. In America, one of the things that happen in the summertime is everybody grows zucchinis, which are these, and then, at some point in August, there's more zucchinis than you can possibly. There's zucchini bread, zucchini muffins. Everybody's giving their damn zucchinis away. Nobody wants their zucchini. That's how it is with this big giant. I'm like, I can't give this marijuana away. I'm not gonna. I've got like 10 years of marijuana I could smoke in this big bag from my last harvest. But what is happening, particularly here in America, there's two things that are happening. First of all, there is no understanding of what the potency is with marijuana. What we need, the solution is to have the equivalent of what we have with alcohol as proof. In America, we know in America, I know this as a substance abuse counselor, that one shot of hard liquor, 80 proof hard liquor, which is 40% alcohol, is equivalent to a glass of beer, which is like 8% alcohol, which is equal to a glass of wine. And people learn that. With this marijuana stuff that's going fast and furious, we don't have that. We need, in my book, I said, we need something called a hookah. I had to come up with a name of something. And that hookah should say, if you take this, edible, that has 2 hookahs in it. And if you smoke this joint, that has 3 hookahs in it. If you take this, there's nothing like that. And it's all, what you see on the side of these things is just garbage. So we have no way to tell. Like we can say, if you have more than 2 drinks a day of beer or wine or this, you might have a problem. We can't do that with marijuana. There's no, I talked to my doctor and he asked me, he said, at one point he's like, how much you drinking? And I'm like, well, I had a bottle of wine on the weekend. And he's like, that's a lot of alcohol. And I said, well, you haven't even asked me about my marijuana use. He's like, well, I said, well, I did some tincture and I did this and I did this. And he's like, oh, okay. And I said, you have no idea what the hell I'm saying, do you? He's like, no. I mean, we really need that to be able to assess a problem. So that's the first thing that I talk about in the book. The second thing, and this is by far the worst, is that this marijuana movement in the United States especially is being led from a medical perspective. In fact, all the words that they use, like they don't say servings, right? You have 2 servings of alcohol or 3 servings of butter or whatever, like we have for stuff. They call it doses. And you don't go to we go to the liquor store, we go to the grocery store, we go to the shoe store, we go to the marijuana dispensary, right? So it's got all this medical piece to it. And that's going to get us in trouble. Like people in America really did a pathetic job around these service animals many, many years ago. They didn't define what a service animal was. And they didn't go there. A service animal is a dog, right? You're blind, you need a dog, right? They did a shitty job about it in America. Next thing you know, you have people bringing pigs on airplanes, snakes on airplanes, peacocks traveling over places, all this crackpotty stuff because they're like, oh, it's my service animal, right? People were bringing fucking miniature horses on airplanes,
You are
right?
me.
Like, that's just crazy, right? A service animal. A service animal is like the dog lets you know if you're going to have a diabetic attack, or the dog's going to, guide you across the street, right? Not what the hell does a peacock do? God, geez, Louise. Anyway, that's the situation we're going to get in with this medical stuff.
Well, it sounds to me a bit like so Monsanto. I never know how to pronounce it. That massive company over in America. So in this country, the EU ruled against ridiculously anything that was natural stuff. So so you used to be able to buy a tub of, say, echinacea in Tesco's, which is one of our big supermarkets. Now you can only get echinacea when it's branded up as one of the pharmaceuticals. And there was some ruling, I don't fully understand it, but it happened quite a long time ago. And it sounds to me like the pharmaceuticals are doing exactly the same thing with marijuana because they want the money for it.
Yeah.
Pure and simple, yeah?
Right. Yeah. And then the other piece that will happen from this, I predict this, 5 years from now, you will see this, is that because people are saying, well, I'm going to get this for medical reasons, you're going to have people doing, drops of marijuana or edibles of marijuana at 9 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm anxious about the speech I have to give to the board of directors, or I'm anxious about I'm anxious about calling and selling. Everybody's going to be freaking stoned, and you're going to say, oh, you can't. What if someone said, you know what? I'm going to come to work. I'm having a tough day today, and I'm nervous about this thing. I think I'm going to have a couple Bloody Marys. You'd be like, what? Someone's going to sit there and have I have a presentation to do this afternoon, and I'm nervous about it. I think I'm going to have 3 pints of cider at lunch. You'd be like, you might have a problem, buddy. But we're going to, in America, people are going to be sparking up or taking tincture or eating edibles, and then they're going to be like, oh no. I'm doing this for medical reasons. We would never let people drink alcohol for medical reasons, but we are going down that road for marijuana. It's going to be a nightmare. And I'm all for people smoking pot. I mean, I'm all for growing it. This is not me saying, oh, marijuana is bad. No, it's not that. What I'm saying is that our stupidity of this at the very beginning is going to set us on a trajectory where we're going to be like, well, I don't know how much you're using. I don't know if it's bad, and I'm using it for medical reason, and I'm stoned all the time. Hey, you Brits might be able to invade us again in 5 years as we keep going and take over. I don't know. It's crazy.
I think in 5 years, I think the timeline has already changed in this world, and I think it's going to be a bigger, better, more beautiful world. I hope.
Because everybody's going to be stoned in the United States. It'll be
that's true.
Oh,
just be the age of Aquarius everywhere.
Right. I was anxious from COVID and depressed, and now I'm stoned all the time, and that's it, right? COVID came, I got anxious, marijuana got legal, and now I'm wasted. Yeah.
Happy life.
Right. There you go. Golly.
So, just conscious of the time, really. What's the new book you're working on?
We have a lot of stuff to talk about, right? We'll have to do another podcast.
We're going to have to. I know. We're going to have to do another podcast. It reminds me of the meeting I had that made me a little bit late to switch on for you. This guy goes everywhere, and it was fascinating, but not enough time. So, So, just quickly, who do you coach? Do you have an ideal client?
The people that come to me for coaching are primarily my ideal client. My favorite client to work with is a client who is stuck and struggling. Like that's, and you don't advertise for that, but if I have a client who is really, I know what I need to do, and I tell them what to do, and I feel more like a consultant or a book, right? I'm like, you could just buy a book, save the money on coaching because you're clearly doing it. My, clients are the clients that I love to work with, are the ones who are really stuck and struggling, and just, it's messy. I love that because it feels like I'm doing something as opposed to being a book and giving facts and information. I have a lot of information to give, as you can tell, but it's not my favorite. I get more joy from helping somebody get unstuck. What I market myself as is as a Boston business coach. So that's I tell people as I'm helping them grow their consultancy business or coaching, you need to think about you think about who you like to work with, or who your ideal client is for you, which is the stuck person. But how do people find me on Google? Right? Those are two different things. And so most people come to me for business or career, but I'm helping somebody struggle with anxiety right now. I'm helping somebody, because we're not just about our business and career. As we're talking over time, somebody lets something slip out, and then you're like, let's talk about that. And so because I have a training in psychotherapy and counseling, I'm able to pivot on those things and help with those things. So that's, people come to me through the door of business and career, and then the sky's the limit to what we can talk about and work on.
Sounds amazing. I can just imagine what these people are like in your sessions. You are an absolute baptism of fire. Yeah, we definitely need to do a second one. So if somebody, even though you've talked a lot about obviously your personal life and not so much about the coaching, but people would get a sense of whether they wanted to have a conversation with you, where would they need to go to find out a bit more about you and contact you?
So the best place to go is to just Google True Azimuth Coaching, and you'll find me, as in True Azimuth, and then the word coaching. And Azimuth is on the points of the compass. Your readers, you folks can go on my website and see what that is. There's a very meaningful story behind the name of my business. I thought a lot about it, and it really reflects well kind of my goal to help folks. You can find me there. You can also Google G. Scott Graham, and you will find all my books, everything on Google. I've been diligent about getting my stuff into Google. In fact, there's a guy in the UK, I'll give him a pitch. His name is Jason Barnard, and he knows this stuff and how Google sees your search results. He is a magician in his knowledge base about this stuff, to, you showing up. And when sometimes you go to Google and you type in like, Donald Trump, and this little box comes up and you see a picture and a description and all these other things. He knows the backstory about how to make that happen. So it's not just these little Google, your search stuff. You get a little box, which is called a knowledge panel. And he's helped me kind of navigate that, make that. So all you have to do is look for True Azimuth Coaching or G. SCOTTGRAHAM, and I'll be there. Easy peasy.
Cool. Obviously, I'm going to put that in the show notes as well. That knowledge box. Are you talking about your Google business profile?
It could be a business. If for businesses, it's called a business profile. You can create a business profile for your business on Google, right? But Donald Trump doesn't create his business profile. The
actual person, you mean, right?
So it's an actual person or a topic, or my books get their own little thing, because Google has to decide whether you're important enough to get a little box.
Right. Okay.
And then, so you have to prove to Google you're important for Google to create a box out of the blue. There's no way you can create this out of the blue. And then the other thing, and this is where Jason Barnard has really got it down, you have to somehow connect everything together so that Google knows the you on this website and the you on that website and the you on that website is the same you. So for example, very small thing, big thing, a small thing. I realized I needed to go around and make sure that I put a period after my first initial, because on some websites it was just G space Scott Graham, and on some other websites it was G period Scott Graham, and that Google couldn't figure out that it was the same me. So that's why we're back to the surname. We started with the surname, we're ending with the surname. That's why, although my legal name is Graham-Stevens, I don't have that on my books. See, it's just G. Scott Graham.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my brand that's out there. And if I put a -Stevens, that would really send Google off the edge. Yeah, like you want to be able to have somebody type in Mel Clark, and there's a picture of you, there's a little description, and there's a link in that box to your podcast, right? And it says the same thing, Mel Clark's a professional broadcaster, blah 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 blah, right? But
Jason,
we could talk about that on the next call, as well as the gay thing, because we're out of time.
I know. Well, whoever it was that booked it for you, they've got the link to my Calendly, so get them to put another one in.
I've got the link to your Calendly because you set that up with me. I'll put another one in.
You put another one in.
Right, and we could talk about the whole androphile pride, gay rights piece, because that's a subject I'm obviously very passionate about.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Scott, it's been an absolute joy. It wasn't what I was expecting at all. But it's been an absolute joy to be in your space. You have just got energy zinging out of every pore of you. And Brian sounds amazing. And I'm so sorry you had to go through that. But you had 31 years of, it sounds like bliss. I'm sure it wasn't bliss all the time, but you had 31 more years than most people get.
Yeah. And you know what? The last thing I'll say to your listeners, this is really true. Don't be sorry for people who are grieving. I am not sorry. I am not sorry, because what the truth is, this is a really profound truth that we just don't recognize with grief. The magnitude of your grief is directly related to the magnitude of the love and the importance that that person had in your life. Think about all the people in the world that have died today that you don't give a shit about half of them.
Yeah.
Really. You've not shed one damn tear for those folks. This is the price of admission. And we started this podcast crying, and I'm going to end this podcast crying. This is the price of admission. And I am privileged to pay that price. And I would do it all again, knowing the price I have to pay and the grief that I carry every day. I would do that because the magnitude and the strength of that grief in my heart tells me of what a profound relationship and how blessed I am to have that. And I'm not eager to let that go, because that's a real truth of what I have created and what we created.
Feels like there should be a book about you and Brian.
There is a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you again, Scott.
You're welcome.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I know the listeners are going to love this one.
Thanks.
Thank you.